or environmental conditions need to be changed that the government needs to address. Class can get reduced. You're saying there's a class system in your capitalist environment as you as a master electrician teaching other people. There's people above you. I'm taking it as well, right? Like an owner who sits there, probably just like checks the computer and tells you guys what to do when you guys are doing the labor and not being compensated because that business doesn't exist without you. So you're not being compensated from the labor, but all that extra profits going to that one dude who's not really doing anything other than fronting money for the business to begin with.
Okay. All right. Real quick. When we're talking about socialism, are we talking about like market socialism? Are we talking about like a central mode? Like what are we talking about here?
When I speak about it, I'm not a socialist. I am a communist.
So meaning like an anarcho-communist, right? Or
I'm the bad kind of communist.
With a government that is authoritarian?
Yes.
Okay, so you're a tanky or?
Not a tanky. I'm not an ML. I'm Stalin's a piece of shit. Mao's a piece of shit. Trotsky's pretty cool, but I'm not a tanky. I think needs to be a government to help the people just do their thing, and the government's responsibility is just to take care of us.
But a stateless society?
No, I like a state. Now, the thing why I chose communism over socialism, because the socialist is just a communist without a gun. And I like that the workers, Karl Marx, my favorite quote from him is like, under no pretext should the people be disarmed. So when the government does get unruly, Marx's own teachings himself say that, time for another revolution.
Why do you think there should be a state?
It makes it easier for people. Like, self-governing doesn't work. You want to talk about self-policing? Well, we just had an incident in Kenosha where someone thought they could police their own fucking community, and look what happened. You get fucking jackasses.
Good example.
You had people in Chaz Chop that thought they could police their own community. Look what the fuck they did. They fucking killed 3 unarmed fucking black people in like 2 weeks.
I mean, out of like 15 people there, the one 17-year-old got ran over in Kenosha. But what about you, I'm sorry, I can't. Wasu. Yeah, I've said it right every time, and I lost it this time. Wasu. When you're talking about some sort of socialism, what are you talking about?
I need to go get some sleep. Good night, y'all.
Thank you, Samantha. I will send you an invite tomorrow night, okay?
Yeah, Flip and Tom Foolery, send me a friend request. Milton, you too. I don't know why I haven't added you yet. I'd love to chat with you guys some more.
Cool.
Sweet. Yeah, good night.
Have a good night.
Sleep well, Sam.
Good night, Samantha.
I have some questions about. I mean, it sounds as though.
Hold on.
Yeah, I wanted to hear last.
Tom was asking me with something. You want to know if I believe what?
I wanted to hear your answer to when you're talking about socialism. What kind of socialism are you talking about?
Well, I believe that workers should be the ones that own the profit, shared profit amongst the workers who actually do it, not one person owning it.
Own the means of production. Yes.
The other thing I look at is making sure that people don't have all these things. Like if you're a happy worker, you work harder because you're happy and content. Then whether or not you wake up every morning going, fuck, why do I need this job? Why do I tolerate this shit? Oh, fuck. I got to pay for bills. I got to pay taxes. I got to do all this bullshit and work my ass off and get nowhere. Right?
So I guess the important question to me is, are you a market socialist or do you believe in a central mode?
I guess it all depends on how you look at it, because I'm not really a socialist. I hold myself completely different from that aspect. Because
you're an idealist?
No, I'm a freedom fighter, land protector, water protector. I'm an indigenous person.
Based.
So what?
And I believe
that. What is it that the indigenous are doing that you think compares to socialism?
Well, even though the little scraps that we get off the table, we all try to make sure that we look after each other and people have food and whatnot. as best as we possibly can with the little bit that we have.
But
we try to make.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, we try to make sure that we do our best we can with making sure that everybody has an equal. That everybody's not in complete dire need. We try to do our best with the little bit that we have.
And you put the government in charge of making sure that that happens?
I would say we would need to look at having a government form that would handle that on a more wider base to be able to deliver it to different communities, but not have complete control over it. If that
I have questions for clarification about the free market and how it applies to your ideology.
I don't think he said anything about the free market.
Oh,
No, but I'm wondering where the market would land in his ideology.
Well, I mean, technically, we would have to look at, if we're dealing with other countries, we would have to look at some form of monetary value with other countries to ensure that, you know, things are well and that we have whatever we might need to maintain, like roadways, the supplies we would need for like housing, plumbing, stuff like that, right?
But that almost becomes impossible if you don't have like free market socialism. If you're going to go to like some sort of central mode, or just say the government's in charge of making sure that everybody's taken care of, it's almost impossible to have any sort of...
No, I'm not saying the government is in charge of everyone being taken care of. I'm saying all of us in our community's perspectives would have that ability, but the government would be there to ensure that the things that were needed were brought.
Right.
Not that they control it, but that the transportation between places would be handled by a government in its sense.
So what would that be, democratic then?
In a way, yes. Because we would all be sitting there and we would have representatives from the community that would take our concerns and our needs and our wants
from each community
to a bigger council to sit down and work it out and figure it out. And
the way you're describing this government would be for something that is like the size of Hawaii. Because
it works, and it has worked on this side of the planet for thousands of years before colonization, first contact.
But those were like, you're saying like communes then, right?
Well, don't we all in cities live in some form of commune?
Not really, no.
Yeah, so the reason that I believe that government has to fundamentally be different than it was in the past is because of science and the internet.
Well, I think everyone should have free internet. I don't think there should ever be a price tag on internet.
The action of us constantly interacting with the rest of the world at large, right, and being able to transfer like goods and money between each other, like means that the governments where it's tribalistic and it's just a small tribe. Like I believe that those types of governments cannot currently exist anymore.
Okay, I get that you might think that, but I think when we look at it, like, okay, if say every city sat back and had one or two or maybe three people that were the representatives of that city or township, right, or little community, and they all sat back together and sat there and brought the wishes and the wants and needs of its community and its people to a bigger platform where these things would be hashed out, worked out, and made available. So say Idaho grows a shit ton of potatoes and someone in LA the community in LA needs potatoes. Well, then it's being shipped over there.
What if Idaho votes against giving LA their potatoes?
Why would you do that?
What do you mean, why would they do that? We have racism. We have all sorts of problems currently within our democracy right now. Of course it would happen.
So what you're looking at is a different form and outtake and outlook. Okay, is we're looking at a bigger, larger scale form of like government, but not government, where not like the government we have today.
But that was the example that you gave, and I'm not trying to be adversarial. Like, truly, I get into it with socialists all the time, and like we have these conversations, and each one has their own like idea of what this imaginary, you know, economic plan is supposed to be, and I try to understand.
Next time you get in a conversation with them, ask them where the indigenous people land in that.
I mean, most of them normally say that we would that the point is to get to a stateless society. So I don't think that that the indigenous people would be excluded in any way because there's not a state.
I have been in many different leftist streams that talk about socialism, and they've been divvying up indigenous lands and still looking at keeping us on small little reservations and say fuck indigenous.
I'll say the last stream that I was in, there was a guy, and I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on it right now. I've talked to him numerous times. He sounds like John Zerka. He sounds just like him. Milton, you might know who I'm talking about, but he normally says you guys don't want to integrate. You don't want money. You don't want the government to, or the United States government to try to like make reparations or make up for whatever it is that they didn't do. You don't want representatives within our government. You don't want any of it. You just want to be left alone at this point. That's all you want.
No, that's a small contingency.
That's what I would think.
I mean, there's a small percentage of indigenous population that just says, fuck it all. We don't want fuck all to do with you. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck off. I don't necessarily blame them. Hang on. I don't really necessarily blame them after all the genocide and shit that's transpired.
That's why I just like laugh. Like I would get it, honestly. It's like
Flip.
Fuck yeah. You guys have land, just tell everyone else to fuck off.
Flip, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got some stats pulled up right here. I grew up in Florida. Do you know, like, I don't know if you've heard of Vero Beach?
A little bit, yeah.
So it's just a small town. It sounds like it would be something that would be manageable by the type of government that you've described, right? So there is 16,857 people there. If I look at Manhattan, which is, I think, much more science forward, it's got people that we would be more interested in interacting with because they're doing more interesting things with their lives. They're constantly pushed around other tribes, such as like there's white people, black people, and like all measure of ethnicities there. So normally they're a little bit more educated and better to interact with.
I grew up on Staten Island as the minority. Yeah. So there's 1.632 million people that are there. And the size approximation of those areas are kind of similar. And then the last stat that I wanted to read off is that Facebook has 44,942 people that work at their company. So Facebook is a company that could exist and live inside of Manhattan, right? But it's not something that could exist and live in Vero Beach.
Okay, okay. But
so for me, it sounds like the tribalistic government. If we try to do that, Facebook would have to be its own government, which would mean that it would be focusing on that stuff instead of like all the things that they're currently focused on.
Why couldn't the people from those different cities just work at Facebook?
So
that must have been a panel question. Somebody in the chat has that.
Facebook would have to exist in something that is like in something like Manhattan. It would have to exist in a place that people have proximity and being able to like go there and work. And they would have to have people that are focused on government, that are helping them do things and able to like produce food and all the other things that society needs other than just like programming Facebook, right? So we would need something. Facebook would have to exist as a company in a place that has other people there, more people. And at that point in time, what ends up happening is that the government, tribalistically, whenever we're talking like 100,000 people, that gets really hard to hold those like couple people that are your representatives like to account for things, you know?
I'm sorry, I just disagree on a fundamental level that people within different cities can't go to work in a different city and all work for a different for a bigger corporation that happens to be bigger than the city that they live in. Like I don't know why that I'm sure there's corporations within New York that are bigger than Facebook, and I'm sure that they could still exist even though that they're bigger than Manhattan by itself.
So we're talking about like sizes of government, right? We're
That's
talking about
great once again.
The way that
I'm sorry, say that again, Sue.
Sue went to the restroom.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
my understanding of what Sue said a moment ago is that we live in tribal things before where you like know some measure of people, and then there are people that are your representatives that you like vote for, and then those people kind of rule your tribe.
But each tribe can still exist within different communities. They're not blocked off to only themselves. They get to go into other communities. So why wouldn't they be able to go into different cities and work? And maybe one city has a corporation that happens to be bigger than the city itself.
Well, okay, so what?
I'm not understanding where the complication is what I'm asking.
Well, there's two things that make it complicated. One thing is that we're assuming that these, in order for this type of government to exist, they would have to be a certain size. It couldn't. He's necessitating. I don't know how to use that word, but he's saying that it couldn't be a giant government. Like he's trying to say that it is a smaller thing, and that these smaller. Right. Okay. So then also the next thing that makes it complicated is that because it's a smaller thing, they're going to have different rules and laws about the way things work. Right?
It was like I brought up earlier. I don't mean to cut you off, but it was like I brought up earlier. If Ohio doesn't want to send California the potatoes, like there would have to be a bigger central mode that actually controlled everybody else and held them in check. It would have to be that way. It just would. In Milton, unless you disagree with me, like I feel as though there would have to be somebody else that held everybody in check. So I agree with what you're saying in that aspect where none of them are accountable to each other. Yes, you are exactly right. Somebody would have to hold them accountable to each other, though.
So whether there is this idealistic idea that they could somehow, because they're smaller, somehow perfectly agree on a set of values in and of themselves. Like my tribe believes that we should act this way, and then just for chance, the tribe next door also happens to agree on the exact same set of values.
Even if they agree at one point. Yeah, even if they agree at one point, if one of them gets, the upper hand, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, as soon as I have more resources than you are, you're now more dependent on me than I am on you. Excuse me, than I am on you, and now I pretty much control your entire tribe.
Or maybe like there's not this weird balance of power. Maybe somehow that never ends up happening, right? What does end up happening is that I believe that society should go in a different direction than you do. And as I'm trying to make that happen in the world, you get in my way.
Yeah, exactly.
Decrease the potential for like good science and good like wellness for all, right?
Yeah, again, that's why there would have to be some sort of central government that holds everybody else accountable. There's literally a million reasons why that would have to be the case. Milton, are you a socialist? I haven't talked to you too much on like an economic level, and I'm not an economist in any way. That I enjoy these conversations, but I want to throw that out there.
I don't label myself.
Okay.
I don't know enough about the different leftisms to label myself yet. But the basic ideas of every workplace being a co-op, aka socialism, or all of the material needs of a population being met by the government, communism, those two generally seem like good ideas. And when it comes to implementation, like all government economic systems are mixed, right? Like the socialism of one country is not the same as the socialism of another. The democracy of the United States and the capitalism of the United States is different than the capitalism of another country, right? So these things are all mixed, and
mixed economies.
Every country makes its own individual system. That's why. Like, I don't understand people who are afraid of the idea of socialism or communism, except for people who are ignorant of what it means.
Yeah,
right. Because communism has already existed in different countries and different localities, as has socialism of different kinds, and those ideas were wrapped around the specific needs of each other. But I definitely, a year ago this time, like, before the pandemic and before, like, I had all of this free time to learn about economic systems and to listen to Twitch and to read the things that all the people on here are talking about. Like, I wouldn't have. I think the reason I glommed on so quickly is because I definitely understand greed, right? As a former Christian and as someone who thinks about morality all the time and who studies morality, like the connection between greed and capitalism, I definitely understand and definitely see clearly, and definitely have always said, even before I started studying leftism, that greed, like, is what caused slavery, right? Because they took resources from the Africans they brought over, right? Greed is what caused the genocide of the native people of the US and Canada, because the Europeans came and wanted to take the resources from them, just like you were talking about, taking the resources, right? It may not have been called capitalism 400 years ago, but, it was basically the same thing, right? Yep. Take from people and then give those resources and that money to other people. So that creates an imbalance. Yeah. Capitalism, like, isn't working, and it's going to end up destroying humanity because there's no check on it, right? It's just like you get more and more. The Jeff Bezoses of the world get bigger and bigger, right? Because he is legally allowed to just take money from his workers, right, and to give it to himself. Like, even before, like, I understood leftism at all, I knew that was unfair. Like, Jeff Bezos, even if he did work like 80 hours a week, like, does that mean that he deserves to make like 1 million times more than any of his employees?
Yeah. So
like, there's a basic unfairness there.
Kind of, yeah. That's why the first question I ask each person is whether or not they're a market socialist, because the one type of socialism that I haven't found a way to argue with is market socialism. I don't know how to do it. It seems pretty concrete in the fact that it seems as though it'll be necessary at some point, maybe not right now, but at some point, it seems as though that socialism will be necessary, and market socialism still uses a capitalistic market to kind of figure out what prices should be and trading and all sorts of other things, so that right now, if we became socialist, any capitalist country could just take us over in seconds. Like, it would be done. We'd be screwed immediately. It's over. But, like, especially with trade.
Sorry, let me back you up. Can you explain what you mean by market socialism? Remember, I'm still like a baby leftist, only within this year.
Yeah, so like a market socialist means that they would have within each company a democratic system, or within like each small government democratic system, to where everything is voted for. The people choose literally everything. But we don't say that the government chooses the prices. The government chooses how much we produce of everything. We don't have like a central mode. We say that like the government still runs as usual, and within each company, they all vote on who the manager is going to be, who the assistant manager is going to be, who the CEO is going to be, how much they make, what their salaries would be, all those sorts of things. And that hopefully they would care enough about their own self-interest to where the company wouldn't tank because they all decide to give themselves $1,000 bonuses at the end of every month. that in a nutshell, that's like market socialism. And to say that like there's a central mode means that the government in and of itself would decide this is because like right now we have a problem with like overproduction, right? We're throwing away millions of dollars of food. We actually waste more food than we actually
30
eat.
million.
Yeah.
30 million per city every day.
Right. So like that's one of the biggest arguments for socialism, is to say that a central mode, a government could say that we don't need that much food, so we only produce enough to feed the Americans or to feed our country, and we only produce enough of like this thing that as needed. Whereas within capitalism, you have incentive to overproduce because you're getting such a large profit for each and every little thing, to where you can overproduce, but you're overcharging at the same time so that you can so that you get those costs back. So anyways, my point is that my first question is always market socialism, because market socialism is just one thing that I think eventually we get to a point where we'll definitely need some sort of socialism, and market socialism seems to be the best option in general, whereas having a central mode just doesn't seem possible, because no matter what, one group of people, I'm really sorry, Wasu, your mic is, you got a lot of background noise coming up.
Okay, I have everything turned off in here but just me, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
It sounds like it's like cars driving by or something like that. I'm not sure.
Sorry, that's the outside. I can do about that, bro.
I gotcha. But
wait,
yeah,
let me get my 50. Oh, wait, sorry, that's
you can just mute your mic whenever you're not talking, and unmute it when you come back. But yeah, it seems as though some sort of socialism will be necessary at some point within capitalism, especially late stage capitalism. The rich only get richer, and we're in, the money is kind of going like this, whereas the amount of rich people is going like this. So it's definitely becoming a problem to where we'll have to have some other sort of system at some point.
So as we're looking at right now, right, as it sits underneath capitalism at this present moment, we waste $30 million worth of food per city, that's and everything else, while the rest of us are forced to live in capitalism. Meaning, at any time and moment, we can lose everything.
Yeah.
While they don't lose anything.
So you
go bankrupt once, and you'll be stuck in bankruptcy for the rest of your life. They go bankrupt 7 or more times in their lifetime.
The issue that I have with socialism, as it pertains specifically to the free market, is whenever we talk about giving the rights of the means of production, or whatever. I'm not sure how that phrase goes, but giving the workers control over the company, making it somewhat democratic. The problem that I have with that is I've owned multiple businesses, and I've had some that have done well, and I've had some that have failed. The way that they have failed are largely because I've owned them, and I was stupid in the way that I ran the business and the things that I did.
I know where you're going with this. I've had the same issue. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's two things. One is I think that in order to run a business properly, know what the right items are to sell and the morals, whatever, it takes a high level of education in that specific area to be able to do it properly. And maybe not education, but intelligence, we can say. The other thing is that the people that I've employed over time, it seems as though there's two types of people, and they'd be on a spectrum. One is, this is a person that's interested in the outcome, so how much money they can make, what they're creating and changing in the world. This person is interested in security. So I have not been able to get the person that's interested in security to take an entrepreneur mindset, or vice versa.
So within market socialism, you would still vote up as managers, assistant managers, general managers, CEOs, all those sorts of things. Hopefully, each one, they're voting in people that they trust. So hopefully these people that they trust are able to explain to them what it is that they don't understand, right? They wouldn't vote them in if they didn't trust these people in the first place. It's not somebody who's just placed there to where they think like, this freaking guy, I can't stand him, I hate this guy. No, they go to work because they like this guy. They voted for him. They want this person to be in charge of them. So hopefully when they come back and say, hey guys, you all asked for a $10 raise each, it's not going to work. And if we do this, we'll have to do it if you vote for it. But the company will go bankrupt and each and every one of you will be out of a job in a couple of weeks. The hope is that they will understand that. They will be able to process that and say, okay, well then what can we ask for? What's the most we can ask for? And then they just do that. They're not willing to bankrupt themselves because they do want jobs. They want to be able to put food on their own tables, and they trust the person who's telling them or who's giving them this information.
Yeah, from what I see, it seems as though in order for man to be happy with one another, they have to have like an enemy, a common enemy of some sort. It seems like a weird, like primal, like thing of the way that they like. We need to have an outlet in someone to like look against. Often that person is a person that has some measure of authority. You can have like a vote and say that I believe in you or I don't believe in you, etc. But often what ends up happening is that I have some measure of intelligence that I can understand the economy of like what the business is doing and how it works and how to make these decisions. And because I'm the person that's voted, the people that are under me often cannot. Like whenever we read off stats about like the food thing, the first thing that I think of whenever I hear that food stat is I think like, I wonder why that is.
Well, real quick, all right,
capitalism and something nefarious, but maybe it has something to do with the way that we want to have like different.
Before you move on, I want to ask you, like, are you married or do you have a wife right now?
No, I have a nice young lady that I interact with.
Okay, so would you marry her because you want an adversarial relationship with her, or would you want to be around somebody who hopefully makes your life better?
I don't. I mean, I don't want less wellness in the world. I'm not sure how I would answer on that scope.
Most people wouldn't look for something that's adversarial. I agree that like we look for competition and somebody who makes us better, but we don't look for something that's adversarial, something that's going to make things harder on us. So when we're voting in a manager above us, somebody that hopefully we trust, we're looking to somebody that we are going to believe in, that when they talk to us and tell us how it is, that hopefully we're going to trust that person as well.
Yeah, I believe that the way that what you're being described is that's some measure of idealism. I think that like whenever you hire someone that says, hey, climate change is a thing, and you don't believe, and you believe like in him, and then he gets into the science and he starts like really understanding it, then he says like, I don't know, you hire someone and that doesn't believe climate change, and then he does the science, and then he now says, you know what, climate change is a thing now that I understand.
That's true. Yes, I do think that when it comes to climate change or even racism and things like that, yes, I do believe that we will vote in ways that benefit us most and not the or not the world. So as long as it benefits our company, yes, as long as it benefits our company and therefore it benefits me, that's how I'm going to vote. I completely agree with you.
Well, yeah, but what if the way for us to move forward selling Twinkies is that you need to make $10 an hour?
I'm sorry, Lost Sue, go ahead.
No.
Hi, guys. Hi. So there are plenty of countries that have worker co-ops.
And companies.
And companies. And that work wonderfully well. So it's not a new idea. It's not a destroyed or gone to shit idea. It's something that actually works.
Well, what do you mean works?
Like right now,
it actually works.
Yeah, sorry. Right now within companies, there are lots of co-ops that work things this way already. Everything is democratic within the company, and employees are happier, they run well, they normally are successful in the end. Like they don't crumble immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the way that you mean works is that it is a system that is increasing wellness, right? So it's like they're better off than the companies that we currently have, and the products or the way that they're interacting with the world is increasing, like in a direction towards science. So like they're better products, they're doing better things for the world. If those two things are true, then yeah, I would definitely have to concede.
I think, if I remember correctly, I think Switzerland and a couple other European countries have that, as well as the factor that the government, they have like extremely less poverty rate and homeless rate, as well as compared to Canada and the United States. Yes,
it's more about a mixed economy probably than it is worker co-ops, though.
Well, what has been produced that has been world changing and like productive to make everyone's lives better from these areas, from these co-ops at least?
The people deciding they don't want to live in capitalism anymore. They don't want to be working on a constant grind and getting nowhere, while Joe Blow, sitting there as the CEO, is buying another $20 billion fucking yacht.
So two things. One thing is that I listed two metrics and you just described only one of those metrics. The second thing is though I'm describing these things this way, I'm taking this stance, I'm not necessarily like condoning capitalism the way it is. So it's not necessarily a this or that. I'm just saying that the issues that I see with the system that's being laid out is thus.
Mm-hmm.
What was the last issue? I didn't hear the last issue. What was it?
One issue is that I said wellness and a scientific progression of society, and that he only listed one of those things that's being done. So that wouldn't meet my metric for good. And then the other thing was that, like, though I'm arguing against the ideology that's being presented, I'm not necessarily arguing for like capitalism in the way that it currently exists.
Yeah. So Sue and Milton as well, and anybody else, what he's saying is, say we have 70% white people who work within a worker co-op, and they all decide that it's better if all of the white people make a lot more than the black people do, and they can all now vote on this and make sure that that's the way it is, because this is all democratically run. Well, now they're able to do that, and there really isn't anything to stop them from doing that, because it is 100% capitalism. So, or sorry, not capitalism, democracy. So or say like, there's a lot of problems with global warming, and we look at global warming and we say, well, if we start to allow these regulations, or if we start to like slow these things down, it's going to hurt our bottom dollar. We're all going to make a lot less money because of it. So we all vote against, lowering our emissions or something like that. Yeah, go
this
ahead.
already happens now, except it's a decision of a board of 12 people instead of democratically. Secondly, realistically, if a country moved toward more socialism and had cooperative workplaces, well then, why do you think that suddenly environmental regulations are going to disappear? We have co-ops now, but there are still environmental regulations, correct?
Right. It's the government that would hold those in place, though, currently, whereas if literally everything is democratic, then you don't need that government there anymore, because each one of you is running your own community.
Yeah, but one of the first things I said is that, in the real world, a socialism bends to fit whatever country is using it, or whatever locality is using it, right? Cooperative workplaces bend to fit their locality or their company. But that doesn't mean that in some ideal socialist world, there are no environmental regulations. I don't know why
real quick,
we are thinking about this fantasy.
When you say it bends to fit, do you mean it bends to fit what they need, or it bends to fit what they want? Because that's the problem.
Both.
Okay, so
both. I mean, these things are complex. So all of those things are considerations.
I mean,
that shape
even right now
in reality.
Even right now in the United States, I think it's something like 90% of Americans think that the government should make changes to lower emissions right now, and put more regulations on companies. Something like, I think it's like 20% say that they would accept a $2 rise in gas prices in order to do that. $2 rise. That's it. Just $2. They only like 20% would actually accept that.
That would be like the 1% in the CEOs and board of directors of companies that would believe that 1% or 2% raise in gas price or $2 raise would be perfectly fine to do that. I think
my point is that they all agree that this is a problem. They don't, but they aren't willing to accept the consequences to deal with that problem.
Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead, Cliff.
I feel I feel far off from the fundamental core issues. I try not to get lost in the weeds in these types of conversations, right? Like if we talk about the environmental thing, right? I'm not specifically speaking of the environmental thing. It's just something that I brought up off the top of my head in order to illustrate the point that if the undereducated people are making decisions for something that should happen, they often will make decisions.
Oh, well, this sounds like, the ancient argument against democracy, right? People are dumb.
To some level, yes. Correct. And I'm saying that in the sense that I want to vote for somebody
I think when it comes to basic normal ecosystem wise views, everybody's pretty intelligent. Now, if it came to the exact way in which a company should be run, or what we can do as a community or a country to ensure that if a large percentage was all white employees and the rest of the percentage weren't, and they got shoved out the door, then that would be something that we would have to look at, making sure that didn't happen.
Okay, so if we run with that idea, or if we also run with the idea of, say, the lottery, right? The people play the lottery, even though, if they knew anything about math, they wouldn't play the lottery, right? But the only reason that the lottery can exist and function and do things is because it's fundamentally working on the naivety of masses. Right.
Kind of.
So
hold on. When you're
Said
talking about math as if it's in percentages. Somebody always wins the lottery, though. That's the point. Is somebody wins, therefore it could be me. You're looking at it in percentages as if it should be logical, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be mathematical or in percentages. It can just be somebody wins, therefore it could be me.
I'm specifically speaking to the idea that. If you have as much likelihood to win the lottery and spend money on it as you do to have lightning strike you 3 or 4 times in a row, right?
Yeah, but the thing is,
whenever you talk about and understand statistics, often people will if you actually understand them, then you're not going to play that game because you're wasting your money.
Yeah, Milton,
I mean, you're saying logical, but you're not thinking about the human emotion involved. First of all, it's only $1. Second of all, it's fun. And that's the end of the sentence, really. People play the lottery because it's cheap and it's fun to them. Right? I never play the lottery, but it's not fun to me. But, if the lottery were $20 or $50, much fewer people would play. But it's cheap and it's fun. That's why people do the lottery.
So the reason that I'm bringing up the lottery is not to specifically speak on the lottery. It's to illustrate a point that people don't understand the math and the economics involved. Like as you just said, it's only $1 and it's fun. But the issue is that that dollar accumulates over a large period of time, right? So if people that play the lottery often will play every day, right, and they do it regularly. So it's not $1; it's like many dollars that they accumulate over the amount of time that they're spending on it. Those
Right,
people,
and people have decided that $30 a month, or that $365 a year is worth it. Do you see that part? Do you see that part, that people want to have fun, that people want to recreate, and this is one way that they do
Can I
it,
interject
right?
as well?
Some people smoke cigarettes, some people eat donuts, but everybody does things
Yeah, you covered it.
that are fun.
Let me-
To
I don't need to interject
Let
anymore.
me just finish my point real quick. Okay, so they have this idea of fun that there's some chance that they may win, right? But the chance, if they understood statistics, they would understand that they're not going to win, right? Now, with that idea of statistics,
Your assumption is that people
let me please
don't understand that.
finish the last part of this. Whenever they take this idea and understanding of statistics and math and how naive and they're not good at this stuff, right? If they understood that, and then we just take that exact knowledge and transfer it into economics, right? It's almost exactly it's a similar skill set, we'll say, right? And whenever we find that most people are extremely naive to economics, then the person that's in charge over them is making decisions that they voted for, right? They're making decisions that are like not giving them a fair shake. It could absolutely be like, as we said, that black people are not able to we don't want black people in here, or the black people don't get paid much, right? Like you could absolutely to set up a scenario where you're getting paid an extremely small amount, or you're having to do like things that you wouldn't necessarily want to do in a different system that has better regulations.
Right.
I'll stop there.
Milton, go ahead, and then 3, go ahead.
So, I mean, when you say all that, it just sometimes people will have two answers. One, like you're misdiagnosing like the lottery, right? Like people play it because it's fun, and only people who are perhaps severely deluded think they're going to win, right? So like the basis of one basis of your argument seems to be that people play this game that they think they're going to win. No, people play this game that's fun that they know they're going to lose. And if they win, like no one's ever like, I knew it. Right? People are like, oh my God, I just won, $5 million. Right? And the second thing is, I mean, if your general idea is like, what if you get uninformed people making decisions? Like I said, that's the oldest argument against democracy. And so what do? Then you educate people, or you just trust that your 500 employees, like the weaknesses that they have will not be for all 500 of them.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in Australia that they have forced democracy right now, and once they actually, I can't remember the name of it exactly, but the correct term, but once they
compulsory voting.
Compulsory voting, yes. Once they added compulsory voting, they saw that that all of their citizens were actually much more educated on the issues, and actually all became very quickly further left once they became more educated on the issues.
So let me respond real quick.
Yeah,
what my argument about the lottery was, that I guess I'm a horrible debater and I mischaracterize my argument, is that the magnitude of intelligence, right? Like you have to understand, like the difference between understanding what I feel is right or wrong for people, right, about policies. Like the gap of knowledge is much smaller than the gap of knowledge that's necessarily needed in order to understand economics.
3, Glad?
What's that?
Sorry, it sounded like you were going to say something.
No, I honestly forgot what I just said, but I think it was like more or less in agreement to what was said.
Okay. Yeah, I think that most of us fear, it still sounds like you're saying an uneducated group of people who are not experts in these areas are going to be making decisions for people who should be experts in this area. No?
And also, we could still have laws like having socialism does not mean we have to get rid of anti-discrimination laws. We have to get rid of environmental protection laws. Like, we could still have those, and then a company would not be allowed to get rid of all of its black employees or put all of its toxic waste in the nearby river.
I feel weird arguing for socialism right now. As I said, when it comes to market socialism, this is the one area where I have a problem arguing with it, because it just logically makes sense after a while.
Yeah, so no, I'm saying yes. So whenever you say, well, the uneducated can't make decisions, to me, every time that's stated, it sounds as though it's a hand wave to the point. Whenever we make we're uneducated and we make decisions on policies that govern us, like the amount of knowledge and the leap of understanding that's needed is, maybe we'll say, I'm just going to say a year of research or whatever, right? And now, or a year of education, right? But whenever we talk about economics, I'm just using random numbers, right? We're going to say that it's in the ballpark of 10 years of education that is needed. I'm saying that we can't, it's not just that they're uneducated, it's that the amount of effort that it takes to bring them to a basic understanding is a huge, near insurmountable thing, because the amount of time that they have to put into that means that they're not putting time into whatever their specific field is, say marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And whenever you have disparities,
I'm unclear on what kind of education you're talking about.
I may make a decision for something that's economically sound, and you guys, people that were under me, don't necessarily understand it, and then they start seeing me as the enemy, and they start fighting back against it.
Again, hold on, they voted you in, though. They voted you in because they do trust you.
Sure.
They voted you in because they believe that you are the person who is best to educate them on these things. It's democratically run from the bottom up. So each person is running a group of people that trust them, that say, hey, we think you are the best person to explain these issues to us. You're the most educated. Maybe you have a degree. Maybe you're, the CEOs still have
I'm going to follow your example. I'm going to continue down that line, right? So they're voting this person in, right? And this person's educated. He makes decisions that they don't necessarily agree with, or they think that it's wrong.
They still vote on it. They still vote on it, but he's the one who is consulting them.
Listen, okay, so he gets into the knowledge. Well, as he gets into the knowledge, he says things, and then they don't agree with him. Right, and they don't agree with them because of the gap in knowledge that I'm describing. Right, so what ends up happening from that point in time? They vote this guy out and they put somebody else in that they do believe and that they like better, and that person, that process can continue, and it can cycle through, and then that guy is going to get smarter in the field. He's going to make the same decision, and then they're going to hate him again, and they're going to get rid of him and get the next guy in, or that guy's going to somehow magically be able to explain 10 years of knowledge with some fancy rhetoric. Right.
So here's what usually happens. Here's what usually happens. Okay, when you have it where it's a democratic thing, like Tom is talking about, usually what ends up happening is that the employers start to take an interest in what they're talking about and what's being said, so that they start learning, so that they can have a better understanding themselves as well about whatever it might be that they're developing or producing. Okay. Now, granted, they may vote in somebody that has years of education in that field, but they also start to learn because they take an interest in their work. It's not like nowadays where you have a CEO or a board of directors that make all the decisions, and you don't have to learn anything about what your company is producing and all that stuff. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is show up, punch in a card, sit there at your desk or whatever it is, and work your ass off the bone for barely any money, and you don't need to learn.
So the way that you're describing this seems extremely naive compared to I listed out a company earlier that had 44,000 employees. For me to go in and just assume that man is going to somehow, one of those employees is going to somehow start understanding better and better.
Not
the 10-year
Not
gap
one
between each of these different people.
Not one, the majority. That's what
Exactly.
matters. I run businesses. Okay,
Exactly.
I have employees right now who literally, and I'm not exaggerating. I have employees who literally don't know how to tie their shoes. Like truly, I have employees who, when I tell them, like, hey, they say, hey, I can't come in today. I can't buy slip resistant shoes. And I say, dude, you can literally buy them for like $20 at Walmart. You'll make like $60 at work today. Like, they're like, no, I have to pay my bills today. I'm like, well, but dude, you're going to make more money today. They don't understand that. I get that, but they're one employee out of 20. So the 19 others, hopefully, are going to get it. Whereas the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, maybe even the 9 out of 20 could possibly, at a super exaggerated level, maybe 9 don't get it, but the other 11 hopefully do. And it's the other 11 that we're counting on to vote for a majority so that this can still be a democratically run process. Now, somebody in my chat keeps saying over and over, just put it into the bylaws that this can't happen. I think that the employees can eventually vote that the bylaws change. I would think that, like, you know, that's not a solid process right there. But I do think that all we care about is that the majority matters. And normally we're not gonna have this sort of process for a company that has 2 or 3 employees. We're gonna have this sort of process with like 20, 30, 40 or more employees, maybe even 100 or more employees, and then the rest of them just run like a normal capitalist company. But you're not going to do this with a very small amount of employees where the 1 or 2, you know, uneducated people who just don't get it or are mentally handicapped or just don't have the possibility of getting it. Those are not going to make a huge difference to your company.
Yeah, I think that.
Well, hold on.
That understand, like, I don't know how to illustrate hard enough that the amount of like I don't know. Do you guys know anything like Feynman?
Hang on.
The amount of knowledge that's needed to undertake to overtake. I'm sorry, to get to a point where you're conversing sensibly about these topics is insanely large.
True. Which is why they need to trust you. Lost Sue, was it you who's trying to go?
Yeah. First things first, I got to say, not all people who have disability issues won't grasp concepts of different things. Granted, there may be some that have certain disabilities that prevent them from grasping normal concepts, in which case we as a society will need to look after them.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I never brought up disabilities.
No, but Tom did.
I did.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm not saying that it's my claim isn't.
I'm saying this. Okay, I have plenty of nieces and nephews, and even my own kids that are about 1,000 times more educated than I ever will be when it comes to college and university and stuff like that. Okay. Although I am highly educated when it comes to my people's culture and traditional values and way of life, I am considered a young elder amongst my community. And if it's a question of that kind of stuff, then there are people that, yeah, I will look to and go, hey, you know more about this than me. Explain it to me so I can understand it.
That's not all people, though. Not everybody's willing to do that. I just think that as long as the majority is willing to do that, that's what matters. And I believe that the majority is willing to do that. Now, we can say, hey, look at the Republican Party. They're not willing to do that. They're not willing to look at studies. They're not willing to look at, what's best for everybody. They're not willing to look at what the majority of the country wants. They're just willing to look at what it is that they want and say that that's final. And they vote the same way every time, no matter what. And I would agree with that sort of scenario, but I don't think that most worker co-ops or most businesses are going to turn out that way. Like, I just don't.
I think we need to remove the Republican Party out of existence.
What is this? A genocide or something that we're talking?
It's not a genocide. It's just a remover of a political ideology.
I mean, as somebody from an indigenous nation, I don't like the thought of a genocide going on.
I would have to say, from somebody from an indigenous nation, that when you're looking at it like a Republican view that fully enjoys genocide and living off the wealth of that and the benefits of doing that to people, I would say that removing them out of our society, or the ideology of that out of our society, would be pretty based.
We're about to go down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to try to avoid this.
So bringing it back to what my basic try to understanding is here.
Come on, Tom. Come down that rabbit hole with me. Come on, Tom. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
I grew up a Republican until like the last... Hey, see you later, 3. Glad. Have a good night, man.
See you, 3.
As somebody who grew up Republican, I will be happy to have that conversation with you anytime on my channel. I mean, I guess we're all on my channel right now, but in a one-on-one, I'd be happy to have that conversation.
So I think that the way that our brains work, they work real good. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that it helps us engage with our surroundings and how we do things. It's not necessarily wired in a way that helps us understand like bigger, deeper concepps. There's a lot of things that we intuitively believe about, like economics, and about a lot of the stuff that as you get deeper into the things are just not true. Like the idea that to talk about something physical, it doesn't intuitively make sense to us the way that quarks or any of that stuff works, right? But as you get deeper into like understanding like quantum theory, then like you understand the world differently, and it goes against our intuition. I'm saying that there's a lot of that stuff that goes into economics as well, and if the majority of people are relying on their base brain as opposed to like 10 years of the education necessary in order to understand how these things work, it's likely that a lot of less educated people are going to be making decisions that may not be in the best interest of themselves or the company.
Okay, so you have a problem with democracy in general, then?
You keep kind of skipping over my idea that this is the oldest argument against democracy. Are you saying you don't like democracy?
So, to be specific, I'm going to directly speak to that idea right now. Whenever we are talking about things like policies that can somehow affect what we believe is right or wrong, I think that the leap of knowledge necessary in order for people to be able to do that, maybe they're uneducated, right? But I think that the amount of time and effort that it takes to educate them or for them to come around to a sensible way of thought isn't insurmountable. But whenever we're talking about extremely deep concepts, that's going to like what the difference between like some random app that I made and Facebook, the difference between those two, like the amount of knowledge necessary is just massive. And I'm saying that it is not likely that is a surmountable thing.
But my question is this: if you're a company who makes apps, you are surrounded by employees who help to make that app. If you're a company that deals with finance, you're surrounded by employees who know finance. So I don't quite understand your worry.
Well, so the issue is that as companies get larger, like let's say that you make an app, right? You're going to have sections of that company that will make economic decisions, and you'll have sections of that company that will make like decisions for the app, and you'll have sections of that company that will have marketing decisions. And those schools of thought, like some of them are easier to understand than others, but you will by necessity have to like you're going to be getting your wage as someone that's like making the app builder. You're going to be having to get that from the economic department. Does that make sense?
I didn't understand.
Yes, but I don't understand why that's a problem.
Well, because if you completely fundamentally disagree with the amount of wage that you're getting, and you throw a fit about something, and then the company says, well, the only way that this company can exist is with these margins, and we can only do it this way, and this is how much money people get. And you have people that don't understand how the economics of the company can work, and they're trying to make decisions for themselves because they see how their lives are specifically affected, as opposed to the, I think that these types of things are different whenever you've got like 10 people in the company, but as companies get larger, which is where we're at now, and I think that companies should be larger so that we do have science, right? I think that it just doesn't work from what I am understanding and explaining, and I might be wrong. Again, I'm naive. I'm young in this too, but I'm saying that fundamentally, I just see this as a huge flaw, and it's hard to wrap your brain around.
So, would you say the same flaw exists in regular democracy that we currently have for federal, state, and local government?
I think that the problem is still there, but I think that the problem is surmountable because the amount of leaps it takes to understand like what is righteous or unrighteous for me and mine and other people that are like me, I think is easier to like gain that knowledge than it is to gain the knowledge of how like the stock market and the economics and everything works. I think that it's just different levels of education needed, different time sinks needed.
Well, it sounds like this is just a communications issue, right? Like it's when you are asking a group of people, like say employees of a cooperative workplace, to vote for something, then of course you're not just going to ask them to vote. Like, I've been on boards of organizations, and every month there's a report of what's going on, so that by the time we have to vote on things, we are knowledgeable of them. So is this just about communication?
Well, let me follow that line of logic. I'm an economist. I'm going to put all of my stat points, because I'm a video game character, into these specific things so that I can be the best economist that ever existed, right? And Facebook would naturally want to hire me because I'm the best at what I do, right? So if I'm put all my stat points there, it's not like necessarily true that I'm going to be naturally good at public speaking or like communicating these complex ideas to others, right? So what the company would do that would behoove it would be to get like an internal marketing person to take these concepts and then convey them to the other people that are in the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, because like we want people to understand this to some level, right? Some measure of fundamental. But what that would turn into, often it sounds like, would be like that specific act and that specific necessity would be that we are now trying to convince people in our company to vote us in a specific way. And now we have politics inside the company, and we're trying to convince them of things that may not be in their best interest. If I am not morally sound and wanting to do what's best for my company, wanting to do what's best for the top people, then I would be spending money to convince people that are in my company to believe whatever crap I feel like telling them to do, right?
I mean, hopefully you
yes, but you're also assuming that a lot of the power is concentrated. See, the thing is, like, if you have a company that's significantly large, if you're talking about like 40,000, 100,000 employees, there's no one person that knows everything about the company. There's no one decision or one aspect of the company's life that one person knows. There's teams of people who know all of the information.
Right. It's like I explained earlier, where you have an assistant manager and shift managers and general managers and CEOs, and like there's all sorts of levels to it, to where each one is representing a different group of people. So it's not simple enough to just say the one at the top is convincing everybody else, because as it goes down the chain, more and more people are going to have problems with this.
So I understand. What I'm describing is I am an economist, and I'm not able to convey my ideas properly. Therefore, I have the company necessity, because it wants it to grow and get larger, hire someone to convey my ideas to other people.
Well, the thing is, the CEO doesn't have power over the rest of the people, though. It's not like it is right now, where they have this like thing where they can fire all of these people and they have all of this power. No, everybody else has power over them.
Correct. So it's not the CEO that hires somebody. It's the company. It is all the people realize that, we're not quite smart enough to understand this man's ideas because he's got 10 years of focus on it, and we have 10 years of focus in a completely different field, right? So what ends up happening is the company as a whole hires someone that can somehow convey these ideas simply to other people, right? And that becomes their focus. Now, because that thing exists, all that it takes is for the economists or people that are in a position that somehow involves the money or the direction of things. They may, if they're in the system I just described, they could slowly try to tweak things because of that gap of knowledge to a system that it has the possibility for corruption in the same way that the system that we have now has.
Okay,
a possibility.
I agree with you to a point. This sounds literally like Donald Trump, like telling everybody that there's fake news and, that there's a fake vote and, that there's, QAnon. And like, I agree with you to a point. And I guess that there's always that at risk. And, hopefully the more we get into the technology age, the more people realize that the resources and the information is just at their fingertips, and hopefully the more and more educated people will be to a point where we can educate ourselves on this. I'm a little too drunk to continue having this conversation at this point, so I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna have to shut down my stream, but y'all are welcome to stay and keep chatting. But Milton, Lawsuit, and Flip, I really appreciate you guys sticking around and hanging out and talking to me. And y'all send me friend requests. Y'all ever want to come on the show, I'd be happy to have y'all. Y'all have a good night.
All right, Tom, we'll see you later, man. Thank you.
Have a good night or good morning.
Yeah.